Picture this. You've got a really simple goal. You just want to deploy a single AWS Lambda function and wire it up to an Amazon API gateway. Sounds easy enough, right? So, you open up a raw AWS CloudFormation template to write your infrastructure as code. Well, 2 hours later, you're staring at 300 lines of incredibly complex YAML. Your eyes are practically bleeding, and the worst part, the deployment still fails. Why did this happen? Simply put, because you used the exact wrong tool for the job. Let's fix that. In this explainer, I'm going to show you the absolute fastest, most efficient way to deploy serverless applications on AWS. To fix all this crazy complexity, AWS created the Serverless Application Model, which is way better known as AWS SAM. The core mental model you absolutely must understand for the DVA-C02 exam is this: AWS SAM simplifies serverless deployments. It is an open-source framework built specifically to streamline exactly how you create and manage your serverless resources. Think about it like this. Writing raw CloudFormation, it's literally like building a house by manually mixing the cement and laying every single brick yourself by hand. But writing a SAM template, that's like ordering a modular, prefabricated house that just snaps together flawlessly in a single afternoon. See, a SAM template is essentially just a CloudFormation template, but with a massive superpower. At the very top of your YAML or JSON configuration file, you add exactly one magic line of code: transform: AWS : serverless 2016-10-31. Now, when you deploy, AWS reads that transform line, takes your 20 lines of super simple SAM syntax, and seamlessly expands it into the hundreds of lines of raw CloudFormation that are actually required to build the environment behind the scenes. Because of this massive shortcut, you don't have to define standard, verbose cloud resources. Instead, you define specific serverless resource types. With just a handful of lines of code, you can provision an AWS serverless function for your Lambda code, an AWS serverless API for your API gateway, and an AWS serverless simple table for your DynamoDB database. Now, here's where this gets really interesting. If you want to connect an API gateway to a Lambda function in raw CloudFormation, man, you have to manually define the API, the HTTP methods, the resource paths, the integration responses, and all the IAM execution roles. It is honestly brutal. But in a SAM template, you simply add an events property beneath your Lambda function, declare the HTTP path, and hit save. That's it. SAM automatically builds the entire API gateway and wires up all those restrictive IAM permissions for you. Okay, so you wrote the perfect template, but how do you actually get your local code into the AWS cloud quickly and safely? Well, for that, you use the SAM command line interface, commonly known as the SAM CLI. First things first, you run SAM build. The CLI scans your application, installs your specific dependencies, and compiles your deployment packages perfectly. Next, you just run SAM deploy. SAM automatically takes your packaged Lambda code, uploads it to an Amazon S3 bucket, translates your SAM template right back into raw CloudFormation, and executes the stack deployment. You literally never have to manually zip a file or click endlessly through the AWS console again. But listen close, because this is where people mess up big time. They write their code, run SAM deploy, wait 5 whole minutes for the CloudFormation stack to build, realize they made a dumb typo, wait for the stack to roll back, fix the typo, and then deploy all over again. Your iteration cycle becomes agonizingly slow. You are just bleeding time and money at that point. I mean, think about that for a second. Why on earth are you testing in the cloud when you can test right on your laptop? The SAM CLI actually has a built-in local emulator. By running SAM local invoke, SAM spins up a Docker container on your own machine that perfectly mimics the live Amazon Linux Lambda execution environment. You can pass in mock JSON event payloads, debug your API gateway routing locally, and fix your code instantly before you ever push a single file up to AWS. Now, I want you to imagine this scenario. You write a perfect SAM template, you run the deployment, but out of nowhere, the deployment instantly fails with a massive red error stating unrecognized resource type. Heads up, this is a guaranteed trap on the DVA-C02 exam. Why did it fail? Because you forgot to include the transform directive at the very top of the template. Without that exact transform statement, AWS tries to read your custom SAM syntax as standard CloudFormation, gets totally confused by the serverless resource declarations, and violently rejects the entire deployment. Also, you gotta remember that SAM is just CloudFormation under the hood. Anything you can do in standard CloudFormation, like defining outputs, mappings, and parameters, you can do directly inside a SAM template. You can even mix standard AWS resources, like an Amazon SQS queue or a VPC, right next to your serverless functions in the exact same file. It's the whole shebang. So, what does this all mean for you? Let's lock this down with 3 rapid takeaways from this explainer. Number 1. AWS SAM simplifies serverless architecture by using a transform macro to automatically expand a few lines of super clean syntax into massive deployable CloudFormation templates. Number 2. The SAM CLI accelerates developer productivity by allowing you to package dependencies with SAM build, automatically push artifacts to S3, and release infrastructure with SAM deploy. And number 3, you absolutely drastically speed up your iteration cycles by using the SAM CLI to locally debug and invoke your serverless applications using Docker long before ever touching the live AWS cloud. I'll leave you with one final warning. Never, ever try to build complex, event-driven serverless applications with raw CloudFormation. If you aren't using AWS SAM, you are wasting hours writing fragile infrastructure and dragging your entire engineering team's speed down. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop building the hard way and actually let SAM do the heavy lifting for you?